to show you how to use Mapkit and show the power that it gives you with a very small amount of programming. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this application that I did last class that I showed you how to use core location, and I'm going to rip the stuff out of the view controller for this guy. Take these things away. In fact, let me just do that right now. Boom, gone. What I didn't show you last time is that I actually have a map button here that does a push segue over into map view. Just to show you what that does, let me just put those back so it doesn't crash. Bring it up. Wow. That's slow. Okay, so this is where we were at the end of the last class, and it's updating the position here. I also changed it at the end of last class so that it would actually show the distance from a specific place. One of 3 different places that I read from a property list. That's not showing right here. What I didn't show you was that I actually had this push segue button here. Press that, and poof, I come over here, and the map shows up. And there's 0 code at this point going on. The only thing that's happening, I mean, this is the whole thing here. And by the way, I can change it to satellite view here. Road view, and then I can close it here. So let me show you the only code that I have in place for this stuff. I come in here into the view controller. I have a prepare for segue. Okay, so when I click on that map button, I do a prepare for segue. If it's the correct segue identifier, then I set this to be a map controller, and I can set map controller.place, this property that I've created in the map controller, I'll show you in a second, equal to place, which is just this constant location that I've got here, which is a place in Tacoma Park. And the reason I have that is it's just something to center the map on to begin with, all right, instead of showing the entire country, which is sort of silly. But that would be the default. And I have here, okay, and so I have that, and yeah, that's another screen. The only other map-related code that I have then would be in the map controller here. I have this function called center map, and center map just takes a location, 2D, two-dimensional coordinate, and creates a region from that centered on whatever that coordinate is with a radius distance of 1,000 meters. That's what this is. This is meters. I create this region here, and then I set the map view's observable region to be this region, and that's why it shows Tacoma Park when it starts up. Beyond that, the only thing that I have is an IB action for that switch that I had between road and satellite. And in response to this, all that I do is if the selected segment index is 0, that's the first one, which is the road, so I set it to .standard, and otherwise I set it to .satellite. And then I also have this closed map action, but all that does is dismiss. Remember, when you do a show segue, you do a show, it's the same as doing a present in code, and you need to do a dismiss of that shown segue later on. Okay? So I showed a map, and this is literally all the code right here to do that. And this, by the way, is the property that we set up during the prepare in the view controller. All right, so that being said, then I want to change this a little bit. First of all, I don't like having that closed down here, so I'm going to get rid of that. And instead, what I want to do is just put this entire thing into a navigation controller. So I'm just going to say embed in navigation controller. Poof, done. And now the segues and stuff will all happen correctly. And I want to remove these 2 things here. All right. And now what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to start moving the code over from the view controller file into the map controller file, because the view controller is no longer going to do anything having to do with core data or core location. Instead, all that's going to be done inside the map controller itself. Okay. Make a couple other things here. This one's going to be distance. And then I'm going to have these over here where I'm actually going to use these to show the speed and the distance. These are the ones I'm actually going to be modified. So I don't want these to be bold. So I want these to be plain or regular. Shut up. All right. So I have speed, I have distance, and I'm not actually showing this label here, so it doesn't have to be capitalized or anything. All right, what else do I need? The other thing I need is I want to have a switch here to turn the tracking on and off. So I'll put a switch in as well. And by default, I want this to be off. Okay, got all that stuff. Now I need to set those outlets into the map controller. And here, as far as outlets are concerned, I already have one outlet for the map view itself. And I should really set the mark here. So if you guys remember, once you've done that, you can actually see the outlets now here in the menu. What's the menu called? I can't even remember. It's a specific menu. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But you get to it with Control 6, I think. So I have outlets. I have actions. So this is going to be my actions. And the outlets, I just pull those in. Again, I just want to have these two different labels that I'm going to use to display what's going on. So this is going to be the speed outlet label, and this is the distance outlet. And then I have a switch outlet as well. And I'm also going to have an action for that switch. Actually, I wanted a different name for that. On-off action. This is going to be, so this one should be on-off outlet. Did I? Thanks. That's probably going to screw things up. Let's not worry about that yet. This is going to be an action. On-off action. And this is going to be of type switch. And now I have to make sure that I didn't mess that up too much. So I can look at the switch here. And when I look at the switch, I can look at the connections inspector. And it has, in fact, two outlets, one of which doesn't exist anymore. So this is the one that's going to go away, because that's an outlet. Outlet, outlet. This is the action. So that should be good there. All right. This close map action goes away because I don't have that button anymore. All right, so that's pretty much it for the storyboard here. I have this thing in the navigation controller. It comes over here. Let me just see what it looks like. And we'll see if I messed up the outlets, etc., because if I did, it'll just crash. Oops, it crashed. Okay, so I already removed that. That was just trying to set the distance, the coordinates, not the distance, but the coordinates. But I don't have that anymore. All right, so here it is. Everything's good. And if I just go back, I pop back out, and that works well. So the navigation controller is working. All right, so what I want to do now is just take all the mechanism that I have in the view controller here for asking for permissions and all this stuff, and just move it over into the map controller instead, because I'm not going to be accessing coordinates inside the view controller anymore. So the things that I want to move are, well, okay, first I had places last time that I actually used to figure out what's the closest location of the three that I put in there. I had locations for home, for work, and for Five Guys, I think it was. And then it would show me the distance to Five Guys or whichever one was closest. That stuff's going to go away. I'm not going to show the locations of places or anything like that. So let me just remove these, or that one entirely. Down here I have load places. That's going to go away. Prepare for segue is going to stay. This is loading the property list. That's going to go away because, again, I don't care about that for this demo. So there's all that stuff. And I have load places here. I'm calling, so I want to get rid of that. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this prepare for segue up, stop, above view did load, and then I'm just going to take all the rest of this stuff and put it into the other controller. This feels very, very sketchy, but maybe it'll work. All right, so here we have all this stuff. There's view did load, centers the map. And then there's that. So I get down to the bottom and I have an extra brace. All right, and then coming back here in the view controller, I have the location manager and the previous location defined. I want to take those, and this thing is just gone. Location services, I probably want to copy over, so I'll come back for that. There's that, then view controller. So this is turn on location services. I'm not going to use it exactly like this, but I want this stuff. So this is all that's left in the view controller now. I have a definition of a place here, and with that place, when I do the segue, I have this prepare for segue, and I just set that map controller's property that has the same coordinate type. I set that equal to this place. So I have a place to initially center the map when it comes up first time, before I've started tracking or anything like that. And that's all that I need to have in here, I think. All right. So now I'm back in the map controller, and I have all this stuff. All right, first of all, let me just see if it builds. It's already complaining about something, I think. What's it complaining about? Cannot assign type of map controller. Okay, so the reason there is what? Why can't I do that? Yeah, I didn't conform to the delegate. So we have to come up here and have to try to remember what the delegate is. Actually, this is the location manager delegate. No, that's clearly wrong. Aha. All right, so here I am. It's showing the map, and I can get back out, and it compiles. All right, but it's not doing anything yet. I haven't actually modified anything. If I look down here in this did update locations, this is where I'd actually get the update or the locations if they're coming in. But I'm not sure that I actually have those coming in any case. So I look in view did load here. What we're doing is we're setting up an instance of the location manager. I set the delegate, I set the accuracy, background locations, allow deferred. By the way, this thing that I have commented out here, this request location, this allows you to just request a single location instead of turning on tracking forever. I mean, you might just want to know, all right, where am I right now? So you can email it off someplace or something like that. And then I have start tracking here. And what I want to do is make the start tracking check to make sure that it has the right permissions and ask for them if I don't. And also, in addition to permissions, I have to have the switch on for things to be showing is what I want. So I'm going to say if, all right, so first of all, I have to get the authorization status. So let status be equal to manager dot authorization status. And then, so if the on-off switch or outlet is on, and either status is equal to dot always, or status is equal to dot when in use. If all that's true, then I want to do this stuff. And that stuff means, what does that stuff mean? That stuff means start updating location. Okay. And I think I want to make this sort of a two-layer thing. I only want to do anything at all if the switch is on. All right, if the switch isn't on, I shouldn't do anything, and I shouldn't ask for permissions. That's there. So let me change this, and then this is just going to be another if here. So if the status is authorized, whatever, I do this stuff. Else, if it's not authorized, then I need to ask for authorization. All right, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. And then there. All right, so the request authorization stuff. Where is that? So right here, location manager, request when in use authorization. I'm going to put right here. All right, now I have copied over this location manager did change authorization stuff, and it checks the status, and if it changes, it calls start tracking. And in start tracking, again, we check to make sure that the outlet is on. If it's on, then, and if the status is correct, we just start updating locations. Otherwise, we don't. And by the way, so this is the if for if the switch is on, else I want to say location manager dot stop updating location, because I don't want those to keep coming in when the switch turns on. Okay? All right. So what is this going to do? Hopefully what this is going to do is start locations coming here, and I'll see distance in meters be printed out, which tells us that things are working as intended. Okay, we go to the map. Now, it comes up here in Tacoma Park as opposed to Palo Alto, because that's what that constant place that I entered is centered on. So ideally, when I do this, it'll try to start updating locations, and the updating locations will call this stuff here, and I'll start seeing printed locations down here. Or it's going to request authorization. I'm not sure. And nothing happens. We'll figure that out. Yeah, so I don't actually have the console on. Okay, so finish deferred. So I didn't get any of my locations actually in. So let's try to figure out what's going on. I'm going to set a breakpoint right here. I'm going to turn this off, then turn it back on. That did do it. Look at my on-off action. Nothing's going on. So if on-off action or outlet dot is on, then start tracking. All right, let's try that. Map. Actually, that's not the one I wanted to hit. Okay, so now it comes here. Okay, so status is what we want, so now it's going to call start updating location, so that's good. And let's see if it actually does that. Distance in meters. Okay, so you see it's printing off down here. So we're actually getting the locations now. The updates are coming in. Everything's hunky-dory. All right, so all that's good. Now what I want to do is start actually moving the map around following where that's going. So let me come back here and come into the location manager did update locations. And instead of printing this, I'm going to take these out because I don't need them anymore. What I want to do is just center the map on whatever the location is. And I have, luckily, a function that I defined last time, center map, which takes a location, 2D location coordinate, and creates a region from that as the center with some sort of distance around it. In this case, I've set it to be 1,000 meters. All right, so that's the region, and it's going to set the map view region to that. And so if I center that around this current location, hopefully it'll follow the track around. So center map, latest dot coordinates is all you need to do for that. Okay, nothing's happening yet because the switch is off, but when I turn the switch on, voila. It's there once. Just once. Maybe he stopped at a light. That could be. Let's make this a freeway drive. Wow. Okay, he's still going. All right. So that's all good. It's actually tracking. It's moving the map around. So that means that all the sort of mechanism that we need to do this stuff is in place. All right, so before moving on then, I want to actually set those outlets so they're showing the right thing. So what I have here is distance in meters. So I've got previous location dot distance to the latest here, the latest location. And that's going to give me back a distance between the two in meters. And what I want to do is turn that into miles, first of all, so I can display miles. Because I care about miles, how many miles I've traveled, that's the unit that I use, and how fast I want to go. So let distance in miles equal to distance in meters times, what is it, 3.28 or something like that. That gives me feet divided by 5280. That gives me number of miles. Okay, and I want to keep track of total miles too. So I have distance. That's going to be my cumulative miles. So I'll say distance plus equals distance in miles. Why isn't it giving me distance in miles too? There it is. All right. And for speed, what I need to do is come up with the duration, and from the duration, then I can figure out the speed from the distance that I've traveled in this one. So the duration, what's the duration going to be? Let duration be equal to, so these coordinates that I get back, or these locations, have both coordinates in them and a timestamp as well. And the timestamp has the date and the current time in seconds and all this stuff. So I can use that, hopefully, to figure out the duration. So I can use latest dot timestamp since this one, time interval since, and since the previous location.timestamp. Okay, so now I have a number of seconds that are being consumed to go distance in miles here. This is not the cumulative one, this is just the one for this current update. So given I have that, why is it complaining? Oh, yeah. All right. Now, I know previous locations defined, so I can do a force here. So that's all good. So I have that. So the speed then is going to be the number of miles that I'm going per hour. So that's going to be this distance in miles times how many of these locations I'd have in an hour, in 3,600 seconds. All right, an hour is 3,600 seconds, right? 60 times 60. So this is going to be like 3 seconds or so. It's 3,600 divided by 3 or something like that, times how far I went in this interval will give me my miles per hour, if I've got this right. So distance in miles times, I don't really need the parenthesis, but I'm going to do it anyway, 3,600.0 divided by duration. And that should be my speed. So now I can say distance outlet text is going to be equal to the string format. And in there it's going to be, I would say two digits to the right of the decimal point here because we're not moving very fast when we're biking, sadly. Miles. And it's going to be distance in miles. Actually, no, it's not. It's going to be distance. Sorry, it's going to be the cumulative distance that I want here. And then the speed outlet is going to give me .text is going to be equal to string format percent 0.1f miles per hour speed. Okay, so I'm centering the map here, which I've already shown. This is just setting up the outlets. Let's see if that's correct first of all. And I want to change this back to the bike trip soon, hopefully. $73 miles an hour. Okay, that's clearly not the bike trip. Okay. By the way, if I zoom, it's not going to let me zoom in here. Oh, it's because I can't zoom in because I've got the region set. Each time I get a location, and the region defines the zoom. All right, but if you look closely here, you can see infinite loop 4, infinite loop 3, etc. So this is a bike ride that's starting in Apple's headquarters. You know, their brand new spaceship they made it. Okay, so now all I need to do is, given that I have the location and the speed is correct, 13 miles an hour, that's reasonable. Gone 6 miles. 6 miles. Okay, that included the car travel at the beginning. Otherwise, that would have been like really fast. Why can I not select this? Okay. So all that's going fine. So now all I need to do now is draw an overlay. And to draw an overlay, I just need to create an overlay, and I need to create a polyline with a bunch of points in it. And then I need to define that, extra function that creates a renderer for a polyline that's specific to what I want to do. So let's do those two things. So I still want to do the center, so I'll just leave that there. So to create the polyline here, I have to have a bunch of points. And I'm going to be doing this incrementally. Basically, each time I come in here, let's assume that I have 1 point each time that I'm given. I'm going to be drawing a polyline from the previous location to where I am now. All right, so I'm going to have a bunch of tiny little segments, but they're going to overlap, and hopefully it'll just look like a continuous line. And it should, because I've done this before, so I know it does. All right, so I'm going to say my coordinates here. It's going to be an array of coordinates. So I'm going to start with previous location.coords. And then I want to add to that, actually, let me just do it this way. I want to add to that all the locations that I've just been passed, which might just be one. All right, but sometimes, you know, if it wasn't able to actually update my app because it got really busy doing other things, it might have 2 or 3 different updates that have been queued up that it's passing in this locations array here. All right, it's usually just one, but it doesn't have to be. And it's also not going to be one when you use sort of deferred updates, which I haven't really talked about too much, but I mean, you can tell it, like I mentioned before, you can tell it, don't talk to me for another 5 minutes. And when it comes back, it's actually going to have been tracking all during those 5 minutes, and it's going to give you an array full of all those points for that 5 minutes. So whatever I want to do here, I want it to accommodate the fact that this could be either just one point in here or a bunch of points. So I'm just going to add to this array that I've created here. I want to make sure the type is not optional, so I'm just going to force that one again. So I want to add to this that entire locations, but of course I just want the coordinates. I don't want the timestamps and all that stuff. So I'm going to say locations dot map, and I'm just going to return the coordinates for that. All right, so that'll give me all the coordinates that I want, and then I want to say let poly equal to Mapkit polyline, and in that I want to pass in the coordinates that I've just defined, and the count's just going to be however many there are. And then this is a polyline. This is again an overlay, or actually, is it an overlay? It is an overlay. I just need to add this, I think, as part of the view. So I say the map view dot add overlay, and the overlay is going to be my polyline. Let's see if it complains about that. Okay, so I've done that. I run it. Okay, so now it's tracking. It's not going very fast. In fact, it's not going at all. Why is it not going at all? You stopped at a light or something. Let's do a city run. Okay, this dude's cruising along at 10 miles an hour. That's not bad. Okay, but it's not showing the overlay. Why isn't it not showing the overlay? Sorry? Somebody mumbled. I heard it. I did add it to the subview, actually. See it right there. Well, I added it to the map view, yeah. But there's something else I didn't do, yes? Yeah, I have to define that rendering function because it can't figure out how to do it by itself, which is kind of weird. But I mean, it gives you an opportunity and sort of forces you to take the opportunity where you could specialize it for whatever you want to do. And I want to do something different. I want to make it show red or something like that. So I define this function, func map view. Rendering, hey, I think that's it. Okay, so there's the function. And now in here, I have to do all this stuff. And I'm not going to attempt to try to do this off the top of my head because I'll surely mess it up. So let me look it up. That's the annotation one. This one's for the rendering. No, where's the rendering? Okay. So yeah, so what this is going to get called, basically, what's it complaining about? Oh, nice. This is going to get called whenever any overlay needs to be rendered. All right, so I get the option to modify all the different overlays, not only the ones that I'm creating, but any overlays that have been added by other code throughout the system, or things that have been added specifically as part of the map itself. All right. So what I need to do is make sure that I just modify the overlays that I want to modify and not anyone else's. So what I want to do here is just check for a polyline because there aren't going to be any other polylines here. So what I'll say is if let poly equals this overlay as a make polyline. If that's true, then I know I have the polyline here. So I'll say let the renderer equal to make polyline renderer, and I'm going to pass into that the overlay. And it doesn't matter what I call it, whether I call it polyline or overlay in this case. It's the same thing, right? It's just a different name for it. So let the render equal to that, and then I can say renderer dot line width is going to be equal to, in this case, 3. Renderer dot stroke color is going to be equal to dot red. And then I think I just return this thing. Polyline, right? I'm just going to show the line that I'm actually that is the map of the track that I'm creating. All right, so that's if this is true, if this is mine, and I have to make sure that I return something in the case that it's not mine. And in that case, what I just want to return is make renderer, right? Make overlay renderer. Passing it to the overlay, And that should be it. Yeah, that's it. Wow, I did that. I'm very impressed. All right, and just to get rid of that, I'm going to put poly here, even though it doesn't make any difference from the correctness point of view. A second. Crash. Okay. All right, so when you have a crash, what do? You look up here and try to figure out what's going on. Ideally, you go to the top, and there's just a lot of stuff going on here. So that's bad. That's really bad. Make polyline unrecognized selector sent to instance. So yeah, clearly, yeah. Oh, that's why that question was. I thought that was a foolish question. Polygon. Thank you. So whoever tried to stop me before, try harder next time. All right, that was it, right? Okay. Now, yes? No. Make polyline renderer. Yeah, because I spelled it wrong. All right. Hasn't crashed. Because now we have to wait because the dude isn't running too quickly. But you see it's starting there. Right, so it actually worked. Let's go to location for freeway drive. Okay, dude. Get on the freeway. All right, so it's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. I mean, I would like this whole thing to be a little bit smoother, and there are ways to fix that. That's not doing what I wanted it to do. All right, so what's going on here? You see it's got dotted line? That's wrong. And the problem is, I would expect, is that my locations are messed up in some sense. Yeah, so I set previous location equal to latest here early on, and then I add previous location into the chords. So this just needs to be moved afterwards. And now I'll actually have the previous location in this set of coordinates that I'm going to be using to render the polyline. And we should get a smooth line at this point. All right, so there he is on the freeway. Nice smooth line. All right, any questions? Applause? Anything? No? Thank you, thank you. Awesome. I had to ask for it, but still, I like it. All right, so that does everything that I wanted to do. And what I want to do, I have a few minutes left. I can't really do an annotation in that amount of time. What I can do is just show you the stuff in the storyboard. So I bring up the inspector over here, the attributes inspector. And you see over here, we have the different options for this map view. I can show buildings, I can show a compass, I can show a 3D view, I can show a control on it that allows you to change this, or actually, sorry, that's not a control. That's just the scale itself. So it'll show you how much, the scale of the map so that you can figure out how big the thing is. You can show traffic, points of interest, and here's where I turned on user location so that it actually has that little blinking thing, okay? And along the lines of what I've done here with the overlay, I can also add an annotation. And it's, again, I have to define another function, map view for annotation instead of this for renderer thing that I did for this one. And then I define an annotation. And the annotation is really, really simple. It's just I set up a title, and I set up a coordinates, and then I get this little pin dropped onto the map. You click on that, and it'll pop up with whatever text I've given as the title. All right, and that's like two small functions. And when I upload this later on to the website, which is now working again, by the way, when I upload this later on, I'll just add those two functions in and show you how to define those as well, so you can see how to use annotations. In the annotations, you can do really complicated stuff. You can add pictures. So for instance, if I want to show the picture of one of those stores down in Tacoma Park, I can have it so that when you pop on the pin, a picture of the store pops up. really straightforward way of doing that. And of course, since I have now an array of all these different points that I'm displaying a line with, I can actually use that, like I mentioned before, just slap on a couple lines at the beginning, a couple lines at the end, and I have a GPS track that I can send to Strava. And everybody can just wow at this fantastic fast bike ride I did in Palo Alto, which was really a car on the freeway. Okay. All right. Other things. So I got 7 or 8 suggestions for the group project from folks in class, and I've added those together with most of the ones that I showed before, and I created a survey quiz, which you may or may not have seen so far. It's on Elms, and I would like you to get to that this week. So by Friday, we'll have voted on which ones of these we actually want to do, and then I'll pick 10 or 12 of those, probably the 10 or 12 highest ranked, but I might change my mind. You never know. And then each of those projects, each of you guys can choose one of those to base your project on. All right, and all these are sort of just starting points. So there's a lot of room for hopefully some flexibility and some experimentation and elaboration in those projects. So even though we're going to have multiple groups doing the same project idea, the same basic idea, I would expect that the actual projects could be very different. All right, any questions about that? No? Okay, so yes, is that a question? No? Question? Just raise your hand. Okay. All right, so what else? Tomorrow, the project 4 is due, right? And then we will probably be releasing the next project Wednesday as well, or Thursday morning. And you'll have a week and a half to do that one as well. All right, and that'll be the last of the sort of 1 week projects. So beyond that, all we're going to have is the next midterm, the final, and the semester project. Okay? All right, see you Thursday. How to use an annotation as, in addition to an overlay. I promised that in class. So I'm not going to type it out here, but I'm just going to share the code. In my map controller, that's where I am right here, I have just the normal stuff here, and then I have down here, I've taken this place, which is this optional coordinate, and I'm de-optioning it here, so I have location, which is going to be coordinates. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create an overlay. I've already created an overlay to do the polyline for the breadcrumb trail behind my positions on the map. But this is just to show that you can do other things too. So instead of doing a Mapkit polyline, I create a little circle just with the location, this original location. With a radius of 10 meters, I add an overlay. And I still need to ensure that there's a renderer for that. So if you come all the way down here, this is where I'm looking at, I'm creating a renderer for the polyline. That's what I did in class. And down here is where I had the renderer that's the default. But here I've added something else that looks almost exactly like the polyline renderer, but I'm saying if the overlay is actually a Mapkit circle, then it must be this thing here. So I create a circle renderer and make the line width 3 and make it blue. Okay, so that's it for the circle. I should have a circle around the area where I'm centering the map initially. The other thing I want to do, though, is actually create an annotation. So an annotation is pretty straightforward. You create an annotation by saying make point annotation, in this case a point annotation. You can have other types of annotations too. And I just set up the title of it, which is going to be Tacoma Junction, and I set up the coordinate to be this location. And then I add the annotation to the view, just like I added the overlays to the view. And then I have to do this stuff here, okay? So this is where I was talking about in class, where I have to dequeue the view because they're going to be reused, ideally, as annotations get scrolled into the view and then scroll out of the view here. So what happens is I have an annotation identifier. In this case, I just made it annotation. And I try to dequeue from the pool of no longer used annotation views here. And if this is equal to nil, if there's nothing to actually dequeue, then I create a new one. I make pin annotation view. It's pin, because I want to actually create a pin with this annotation and the reuse identifier here, which is just this annotation up here. And I also set up the fact that you can do a call out, which is when you click on the pin, it actually shows whatever the text is. All right. All right. If annotation view is not nil, in other words, if I was able to dequeue this thing, then all I do is just change the annotation that view is pointing to. All right. And then I return that, and that's it. Okay. Given that, let's see what it looks like. Installing, bringing it up, and come on. Here we are. Click on map. And this is before I've done any selecting of tracking or anything like this. And this is just the point where I told it to initially center the map. And you can see I have that circle that I created, the Mapkit circle, around it, 10 meters. That's 10 meters radius. And this pin here is the pin for my original annotation, which is right here, Tacoma Junction. So let me see. Click, Tacoma Junction. There's an annotation. Okay, that's that.